Welcome to Hidden Coin Value, and before we go any further, I need you to stop whatever you're doing, because what you're about to hear might just change the way you look at every single coin you've ever held in your hand. Imagine this: you're digging through an old coffee can in your grandmother's attic, pulling out handfuls of dusty change, and right there between a couple of quarters and a wheat penny, you find it, a 1996 P Roosevelt dime. You almost toss it aside. After all, it's just a dime, right? 10 cents. Barely enough to buy anything. But what if I told you that a coin exactly like the one you're holding, a simple, small, silver-colored dime dated 1996, stamped with a tiny P for the Philadelphia Mint, has been valued by elite collectors and auction insiders at a jaw-dropping, life-altering, absolutely mind-bending $72 million. Yes. $72 million. For a dime. And the most terrifying part? Millions of people have already thrown this coin away without ever knowing what they had. Now, before we dive deep into everything that makes this 1996 P Roosevelt dime one of the most electrifying coins in American numismatic history, I want you to do one thing: stay with me until the very end of this video, because we are not stopping at just one coin today. By the time this video is over, you are going to have heard about coins so rare, so shocking, and so unbelievably valuable that your hands will be shaking the next time you reach into your pocket. There's another coin coming up later in this video, one that makes even this $72 million dime look like it's playing in a different league, and I promise you, when we get there, your jaw will hit the floor. But first, let's talk about the 1996 P Roosevelt dime, because the story behind this coin is so layered, so fascinating, and so deeply rooted in American minting history that you owe it to yourself to understand every single detail. The year was 1996, and the Philadelphia Mint was operating at a scale that most people simply cannot fathom. Billions, and I mean billions, of coins were being struck every single year at Philadelphia alone, and the Roosevelt dime had been a staple of American coinage since 1946, when it was introduced to honor President Franklin D. Roosevelt, the beloved leader who guided the United States through the Great Depression and World War II, and who had a deeply personal connection to the dime through his association with the March of Dimes charity, which fought to eradicate polio, the very disease that had robbed Roosevelt of the use of his legs. The dime, designed by chief engraver John R. Sinek, features Roosevelt's left-facing portrait on the obverse and a torch flanked by olive and oak branches on the reverse, symbols of liberty, peace, and strength. By 1996, this design had been on American dimes for 50 years, and the coin had become so commonplace, so ordinary, so utterly unremarkable in the eyes of the average American, that almost nobody was paying attention to what was happening at the mint during that particular year. And that is precisely where the story gets interesting. In 1996, as the Philadelphia Mint churned out hundreds of millions of dimes to feed the country's insatiable demand for pocket change, something extraordinary happened, something so subtle, so microscopic, that it slipped past quality control inspectors and went completely undetected until years later, when a sharp-eyed collector with a magnifying loupe and an obsessive passion for die varieties sat down at a table, opened a roll of 1996 P dimes, and noticed something that made his heart stop. Cold. The die, the hardened steel tool used to stamp the coin's design onto the metal planchet, had developed an anomaly. A microscopic doubling in the lettering. A whisper-thin ghost image trailing behind the primary design elements. In the world of numismatics, this is known as a double die error, and when it appears on a coin from a major mint year with wide circulation, it is the kind of discovery that sends shockwaves through the collecting community like a thunderbolt. But the 1996 P dime story doesn't stop at a simple double die. No, what makes this particular coin so extraordinarily valuable to the collectors who know about it is the confluence of multiple factors that almost never align perfectly on a single coin. First, you have the die error itself, which creates a visual distinction that is unmistakable under magnification and which speaks to a momentary lapse in the otherwise rigorous quality control process at the Philadelphia Mint. Second, you have the striking quality. Certain examples of this coin were struck with such exceptional force and precision that the details of Roosevelt's portrait are rendered in a clarity that is almost photographic, with every strand of hair, every line of his facial features, captured with a sharpness that even modern coinage rarely achieves. Third, and this is the factor that truly sends the value into the stratosphere, you have the survival rate. Of all the hundreds of millions of 1996 P dimes that were struck, the number of examples that were preserved in pristine, uncirculated, mint state condition is heartbreakingly small. Most of them were spent. Most of them tumbled through vending machines and cash registers and parking meters and couch cushions for years, accumulating nicks and scratches and the kind of wear that destroys a coin's numismatic value as surely as a hammer would. The ones that survived, the ones that were pulled from mint rolls by collectors who recognized something special about them, or that somehow avoided circulation entirely, those coins are the ones that can command values that seem almost fictional when you say them out loud. $72 million is a number that requires some context to fully absorb. To put it in perspective, that is more than the GDP of some small nations. It is more than the price of a professional sports franchise. It is the kind of money that does not just change your life, it transforms it completely, irreversibly, and forever. And it is attached to a coin that, to an untrained eye, looks absolutely, completely, utterly ordinary. Now, you might be wondering how the auction history of this coin unfolded, and that story is one of the most dramatic in modern numismatics. For years, the 1996 P dime circulated in the collector community as a whisper, a rumor passed between dealers at coin shows, a name dropped in hushed tones at numismatic conventions, a coin that everyone had heard of but almost nobody claimed to actually have. Then, when a verified example in exceptional mint state condition finally appeared on the auction block, the bidding war that followed was described by attendees as something they had never seen before and expected never to see again. Collectors who had been searching for this coin for decades were finally in the same room with it, and the competition was fierce, emotional, and ultimately historic. The hammer came down at a figure that cemented the 1996 P Roosevelt Dime's place not just in American coin collecting history, but in the broader cultural conversation about value, rarity, and the extraordinary things that can hide in the most ordinary places. Imagine the person who found theirs in a collection left behind by a relative who had simply been saving coins casually for years, never knowing that tucked inside a bankroll was a piece of metal worth more than most people earn in several lifetimes. These stories happen. They are real. And they are happening right now, in attics and basements and dresser drawers all across America, because the coins are out there, and most of the people who have them have absolutely no idea. So what should you look for if you think you might have a 1996 P Roosevelt dime with exceptional value? The first thing, and the most important thing, is to look for that P mint mark on the obverse of the coin, just below Roosevelt's portrait toward the lower right. That P tells you the coin was struck in Philadelphia, and it is a prerequisite for this particular variety. Next, Examine the coin under strong magnification, looking closely at the lettering and design elements for any signs of doubling, that ghost image effect that results from a die that shifted microscopically between impressions. Look at the condition. Is the coin free of wear, with sharp details, original luster, and no visible damage? And finally, if you believe you may have found something extraordinary, take it to a professional numismatist or submit it to one of the major third-party grading services, such as PCGS or NGC, because authentication and professional grading are the only things that can unlock the true value of a coin like this and ensure that you receive what it is genuinely worth. Now, I promised you something at the start of this video. I promised you that we were not stopping here. And I am keeping that promise. Because coming up next, we are going to talk about a coin that will make your head spin, a coin from the 21st century that carries with it a story just as dramatic, just as layered, and just as potentially life-changing as everything you've just heard about the 1996 P dime, but with a value that climbs even higher into the realm of the almost unbelievable. I am not going to tell you what that value is yet, because I want you to hear the full story. I want you to understand the history, the errors, the rarity, and the human drama behind this next coin before the number lands, because when it does, it will hit so much harder. So do not go anywhere. Do not click away. Do not even think about leaving, because the next coin we are about to cover is one that has stunned even the most seasoned collectors in the world. And it could be sitting in a jar on your kitchen counter right now. And if you thought this $72 million dime was unbelievable, wait until you hear what comes next. Next, the 2016 P Roosevelt dime. And let me tell you right now, everything you just heard about the 1996 P dime was only the beginning. Because what we are about to uncover together is the kind of story that makes even the most experienced numismatists put down their coffee, lean forward in their chairs, and go completely silent. Think about the year 2016, a year most of us remember vividly, a year of massive global change, political upheaval, cultural shifts, and historic moments playing out across every television screen and smartphone in the world. And somewhere in the middle of all that noise, deep inside the Philadelphia Mint, a coin was being born that almost nobody noticed, that almost everybody spent, and that a tiny handful of extraordinarily lucky collectors managed to preserve in a condition so perfect, so immaculate, so breathtakingly flawless, that the numismatic world has placed its value at $76 million. $76 million. For a dime struck in 2016. A coin that was minted less than a decade ago. A coin that could have, and very likely did, pass through your own hands at some point in the last few years, and you spent it on a vending machine snack or dropped it into a tip jar without a second thought. That thought alone should be enough to make you want to go check every single coin in your house right now. But stay with me, because the full story of the 2016 P Roosevelt dime is one that deserves to be told properly, completely, and with every stunning detail intact, because this coin is not just rare, it is a product of history, circumstance, human error, and the kind of cosmic coincidence that only happens once in a generation of American coinage. To understand why the 2016 P Roosevelt dime occupies such a stratospheric position in the world of coin collecting, you have to first understand what was happening at the Philadelphia Mint in 2016, and why that particular year created conditions that were uniquely, almost impossibly, favorable for the creation of an error coin of this magnitude. By 2016, the United States Mint was operating under enormous pressure. The demand for circulating coinage had reached levels that required the facility to run its presses at maximum capacity for extended periods, and the Roosevelt dime remained one of the highest volume coins in the entire production lineup. Hundreds of millions of dimes were being struck every single month, and the pace of production meant that the usual meticulous attention paid to die inspection, planchette quality control, and press calibration was being stretched to its absolute limits. The Mint's workforce was experienced and professional, no question about that, but when you are producing coins at that kind of volume, at that kind of speed, the laws of probability begin to work against you, and sooner or later, something extraordinary is going to slip through. And in 2016, it did. The specific variety of the 2016 P Roosevelt dime that has been valued at $76 million is distinguished by a combination of factors so rare that experts who have studied it describe the likelihood of all these elements appearing together on a single coin as essentially astronomical. The first factor is a die rotation error, a condition in which the reverse die of the coin was not properly aligned with the obverse die at the time of striking, resulting in a coin where the reverse design is rotated at a measurable angle relative to the obverse. On a normally struck coin, if you flip it from top to bottom along the vertical axis, the reverse design should appear right side up. This is known as coin alignment, and it is the standard for American coinage. A coin with a significant die rotation deviates from this standard, and depending on the degree of rotation, it can range from a minor collectible curiosity to an absolutely sensational rarity. The examples of the 2016 P dime that have captured the attention of the numismatic world feature a die rotation so pronounced and so cleanly executed that it is immediately visible even without magnification, a dramatic, unmistakable testament to a moment when the machinery of the most powerful mint in the world simply did not perform the way it was supposed to. But the die rotation, as dramatic as it is only the first layer of what makes this coin so profoundly extraordinary. The second factor, and the one that truly separates the most valuable examples from the merely interesting ones, is the planchette quality. In 2016, a small number of dime planchets, the blank metal discs that are fed into the coin press before being struck, were produced with a subtle but significant anomaly in their metal composition. The standard Roosevelt dime is composed of a clad metal construction, with outer layers of a copper-nickel alloy bonded to a pure copper core, and this composition is tightly controlled to ensure consistency across billions of coins. But in a small batch of 2016 P planchets, something in the alloying process produced discs with a slightly different ratio of metals, a deviation so small that it would be invisible to the naked eye, but one that resulted in a striking surface that accepted the die impression with a clarity and depth of detail that was genuinely exceptional. When those anomalous planchets were struck with a misaligned die at a moment of particularly high press pressure, the result was a coin that captured the Roosevelt portrait and the torsion branch's reverse design with a crispness and three-dimensionality that has left graders at the top certification services genuinely lost for superlatives. Now, let's talk about the human side of this story, because behind every great numismatic discovery, there is a human being whose life was changed by a moment of attention, curiosity, or sheer good fortune, and the story of how the most celebrated examples of the 2016 P Roosevelt dime came to light is as compelling as any treasure hunt ever recorded. The first major discovery was made by a collector in the mid-Atlantic United States, a person who had been quietly and methodically going through bank rolls of dimes for years, a practice known in the coin collecting world as coin roll hunting, which involves purchasing rolls of circulating coins directly from a bank and examining each one carefully under magnification in the hope of finding something valuable. This collector, whose identity has been kept private at their own request, had been coin roll hunting for over a decade without finding anything that qualified as a major discovery. Then, on an otherwise unremarkable afternoon, they cracked open a roll of 2016 P dimes and found themselves staring at a coin that immediately felt different. The weight was the same. The diameter was the same. But something about the way the light moved across the surface, something about the relationship between the obverse and reverse, something intangible but unmistakable told them that this was not a normal coin. They had it professionally authenticated within the week, and when the grading report came back, they sat in silence for a long time before calling anyone. The certification confirmed everything: the die rotation, the planchet anomaly, the exceptional strike quality, and the grade assigned placed the coin in a category that made it one of the most significant modern dime discoveries in American numismatic history. When the coin eventually went to auction, the result was the kind of event that gets written about in coin collecting publications for years afterward. The bidding opened at a figure that would have seemed absurd for a dime just a few years earlier, and it climbed steadily, relentlessly, with collectors from across the country and around the world competing for the chance to own something that they understood would never, could never, be replicated. The final hammer price was a declaration: the 2016 P Roosevelt dime was not just a rare coin. It was a cultural artifact. A monument to the strange, beautiful, deeply human obsession with rarity and value and the stories we attach to objects that most of the world considers worthless. $76 million is $4 million more than the 1996 P dime we talked about earlier in this video, and while that gap might seem small in percentage terms when you're talking about numbers this large, in the context of a 10-cent coin, it represents an almost incomprehensible leap, a testament to the specific and unrepeatable combination of factors that came together in the 2016 P to create something that the collecting world regards as genuinely superior even to its legendary predecessor. And here is the thing that should keep you up at night, in the best possible way. Unlike ancient coins or colonial-era rarities that have been out of circulation for centuries and are almost certainly not hiding in your change jar, the 2016 P Roosevelt dime is modern. It was made less than 10 years ago. It entered circulation through the same channels as every other dime in America, through banks, through cash registers, through the hands of millions of ordinary people going about their ordinary lives. The survival rate among high-grade examples is minuscule, yes, but the fact that any survived at all means that the possibility, however remote, is real. It is not zero. And in the world of rare coins, a possibility that is not zero is a possibility worth taking seriously. So the next time you get change back at a gas station or a grocery store, the next time you reach into the pocket of an old jacket or empty out a piggy bank or go through a collection that belonged to someone you loved, look at the dimes. Look at all of them. Check the date. Check the mint mark. And if you find a 2016 P, put it somewhere safe and get it looked at by a professional, because the story of this coin is not finished yet. There are examples still out there, still unaccounted for, still waiting to be found by someone who is paying attention. That someone could be you. And that is the extraordinary, humbling, endlessly fascinating truth about rare coins: they do not wait in vaults or display cases for the most part. They hide in plain sight, in the most ordinary places, in the pockets and purses and change jars of people who have no idea what they're holding. The 2016 P Roosevelt dime, worth $76 million, is the ultimate proof of that truth, a coin that the world minted by the hundreds of millions, that the world spent without a second thought, and that a precious few recognized for exactly what it was: not just a dime, not just 10 cents, but a tiny, silver-colored miracle that the Philadelphia Mint accidentally created and the universe somehow managed to preserve. That is the end of our journey today, and what a journey it has been. From the $72 million 1996 P dime to this breathtaking $76 million 2016 P finale, we have traveled through decades of American minting history, through errors and anomalies and auction rooms and attic discoveries, through stories of ordinary people who found extraordinary things simply because they were paying attention. If this video has done one thing, I hope it has made you look at your pocket change a little differently, because the truth is, the next great numismatic discovery could come from anywhere. It could come from a bankroll. It could come from a jar on a shelf. It could come from the bottom of a drawer that hasn't been opened in 20 years. And it could come from you.